In this video, you're going to learn my favorite day trading strategy that I use all the time to pull out consistent gains from the market. There's no crazy indicators needed, no fancy analysis needed. It's very simple and very repeatable. And I used it today on GWH to make 45% profit in a single day. So with all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and let's get right into the lesson. So first things first, here we are on my E-Trade platform. This is what I use to kind of chart and do my lessons. And let's break down the catalyst behind GWH, why I even focused on it in the first place. This is a recent SPAC merger. It's kind of like an IPO, but it's not really. I might call it an IPO through this lesson just for simplicity. But they did a merger with a listed company that's like a blank check company. But the main catalyst was that after they did this merger, this news release came out across the wire. And it says Bill Gates backed ESS, which is the company. So this is a billionaire play. If you have been in the market since like 2016, 2017, these used to be very popular. Obviously, everyone knows who Bill Gates is. Net worth $131 billion, one of the richest people in the world. And it's very common to see investors and traders will want to follow along with what billionaires do, right? Because obviously, if a billionaire is willing to put his money into a company like GWH, then it might be a good idea to follow what he's doing because he's rich in the end. And obviously, he knows what he's doing, right? So that's kind of the catalyst behind GWH. Right when I saw that it was a Bill Gates backed company, it was #1 on my watch after I saw it gapping up this morning. So like I said, it is a recent IPO. They just listed onto the NYSE. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. So technically, right, all this previous action isn't really relevant. It's part of the previous company that merged with it. So we can treat this as a stock that's in new all-time highs. So, usually whenever I'm trading stocks, I like to mark off previous levels of resistance and use those as my profit targets. But here, because we are in all-time highs, there's no levels to look at for profit. So technically, it could go as far as it wants. As long as the chart keeps on building up, it could go to $50, $100. We've seen it before. And with the stock that's in all-time highs, you have to just allow this stock to work until it stops working. So that's what we're going to be really diving into today. Now, before we get into that, though, let's talk about the entry for GWH and what this strategy really entails. So this has a very simple name. It is kind of straight to the point. And this strategy is buying the pre-market high as support. So if we look at the chart from Thinkorswim, since the chart from E-Trade has its pre-market start a bit later, here's the chart from Thinkorswim, and I cut it off right to where it looked like in this morning. You can see in pre-market, it ran up, massively, gapped up, hit about $17 or so. And if you look at the 5-minute line chart, its resistance was right near 1650. So that is the pre-market high. And basically, all the strategy entails is that if you have a stock that's able to break out above pre-market high, then you buy the dip into that pre-market high, expecting it to hold support. There's no indicators to use. There's no confirmation to look for. You don't know if it's going to hold for sure, but you take the risk into it because if it does hold, you have the best entry possible. If it doesn't hold, then you manage your risk accordingly based on what works for you. So that was what we saw today on GWH. Right when it broke out at market open and it ran up to $19, I knew that I wanted to play that previous resistance as new support. And I even just left orders at 1670, 1660 to buy the dip as it came down. This was on the watch list today with TradeBuddy. And with every step of the way that we're going to talk about here, I broke it down in our chat room. So there's the entry right there. You can see 1660. My average was 1670. And now from here, because I said this is a stock that's an all-time highs, I just use a very simple rule. As long as previous resistance can hold as new support, the stock is 100% bullish. And that is what I used all day to dictate how long I would hold the stock for. So let's zoom in a little bit. As you can see, prior to that pullback and the entry in the 1660s, we did set this first resistance here at about 1890. Now, normally, depending on how I feel about the stock, how bullish I am on it, I would usually want to lock in my first partial profits into that first intraday resistance. However, because this is a billionaire-backed play and it's an all-time highs, I was willing to take the risk to not lock in my first profits there and to see if it could break out. And then if it can break out, I just use that rule, previous resistance as new support, and wait until we see signs of backside. So what that means is that all during this time, as it was still below 1890 and testing it, I was totally fine with the idea that we could see it pull back down to 1660, but as long as it holds it, it's bullish. I wouldn't want to stop out if it broke below VWAP. I wouldn't want to stop out until it showed me that it's no longer holding support. So that's very important. So all during this, my main thesis was, hey, as long as 1660 holds, it's 100% bullish. Eventually, the stock was able to break out above 1890 and it squeezed all the way up to 21 bucks. So now, what's my thesis? I'm just going to use the same thing. As long as previous resistance can hold as new support, the stock is 100% bullish. So as long as it could hold 1890s, there's no reason to sell, right? You just have to stay patient, let the stock do its work, let it play around and find its range, and just do nothing, right? And I broke this down in the chat as well. So you can see it found some resistance here. I'll just mark it off because it is relevant. Found some resistance here near 2078. And as it was pulling back, I didn't panic because I knew as long as it holds 1890, it's still good. So you don't want to just, stop out because you're afraid of losing gains. You can see it never broke below. And then boom, it squeezed higher. Broke out all the way up into the 24 area. So once again, what's the thesis? What's the strategy? As long as previous resistance can keep holding as new support, this stock is 100% bullish. Where is previous resistance? Right there, marked it off, 2070s. So as long as it could hold that, it's still bullish. Had a very small pullback, only one candle was red, and then it broke out even higher, ran up to $26. Now I'm up 10 bucks per share. And now it might sound kind of crazy, but here, after this was pulling back, because this wasn't really real resistance here in the 23s, believe it or not, I was still fine with this pulling back down and testing 2070s. I wasn't afraid of losing that $6 of unrealized gains because the stock is in all-time highs, because the main strategy is still there of previous resistance holding as new support. The previous resistance is down at 2080. So I have to be okay with it pulling back all the way down to there, and it could still be bullish. It pulled back as low as like 24 bucks. And this is very important too, right? Like the reason why I was able to hold through this drop from 26 down to the 23s was because I was focusing on the big picture and I was allowing it to, find its range and do its work. And then here was a very nice trap that formed. It trapped a lot of sellers. Then it squeezed higher. Broke out over that previous resistance near 2660s. So after this breakout happened, what's the thesis? Once again, it's very simple. As long as previous resistance can keep holding as new support, the stock is 100% bullish. Now here at this point, because I was up 10 bucks per share and we did make that little range of support, I did throw a little caveat in there where I said, all right, no matter what now, like if we just have a random flash crash or, whatever happens, I will not hold the stock below 24 bucks. So no matter what, now at this point, I am guaranteeing myself to make about 45% profit, which is a very good trade, right? Some people would never even see that trade in their entire career. The reason why I did that was just to kind of protect my investment in some sense. But the main thesis was, hey, as long as 2660s can hold as support, there's no reason to sell yet. And finally, as we can see here, it tried holding as support, but then it broke down. So this was the first sign of weakness we saw all day. And what I do at this point is, now that the trend has failed to keep holding previous resistance as new support, I'm going to use previous resistance as resistance again and sell into that level, basically making the chart turn into a head and shoulders pattern, right? So like I said, using previous resistance as resistance again and selling my shares back into that level because we now have a failed breakout. This is the most basic way that you can trade a chart when it looks like this. Now, I'll be honest, I did get a little bit greedy. If I was a perfect trader, I should have sold all of my shares back into 2660s. I only sold half. There was some greed there because I did think, maybe it could go higher because it is such a big squeeze. But ultimately, with the remaining half of my shares, I said, okay, no matter what, I'm just going to wait to see if it can hold 24, maybe squeeze after hours. But if it breaks below 24 bucks, I'm just going to sell, stop out and book my trade. As you can see, it did end up making that kind of head and shoulders pattern, tested that resistance again, but it held against it, broke below 24, and I stopped out the rest of my shares, as you can see here on this profit chart. So that's the basic pattern, right? This is how I trade my pre-market high resistance as new support trades. And this is how you can stay patient, let the stock do its work. And this works very well when the stock is in new all-time highs. As long as the 5-minute chart keeps building up, there is really no reason to sell. Just have to stay patient, let the stock do its work. You don't know how many charts I saw on Twitter today of people like making 50 cents a share and saying, oh, they nailed the play when they missed out on 10 bucks. And all they had to do was wait and stay patient. So hopefully this helps you out. If it did, leave a like on the video. If you have any questions about this, feel free, please leave a comment. I'd be happy to help you out. If you want to trade with me and my team Trade Buddy, hit the links down below to find more information. And last but not least, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell next to that button to be notified of future videos. All right. Hope you have a great day, great evening, and I'll see you in the next video.